Hi guys, welcome back. This is gonna be our final video for the Introduction to V-Ray series. In this video, I want to go ahead and explain a bit about how to deal with noise in your renders. Now, let me show you what we have right here now. This is the same scene we used in the two previous videos where we explained about the global illumination and the color correction. So I'm gonna open up the last V-Ray frame buffer, and this is our render so far, or the final render so far. We have a decent render, but we have still a few issues to deal with, and namely that's the noise. Now the noise is this grainy looking element we have in our render. So the first thing that we want to define is what is noise. Noise is the lack of information that V-Ray has to deal with. And if it has a lack of information, the way it's showing you it's by generating noise or this grainy look we have in our render. So let's see how we can deal with this problem and make sure that our scenes are free of noise. In order to get rid of the noise, the first thing you need to understand is where that noise is coming from. Generally, noise can come from three sources. First would be lighting. The second one would be reflections. And the third one would be the general settings for your V-Ray. So let's go ahead and see how we can deal with all of those individually. So let's go and check our render setup first. In here, I'm going to go into the V-Ray and check my image sampler. I can see that I have adapter DMC. I don't have an anti-aliasing filter. I can turn it on, and now I want to see my DMC image sampler settings. By default, it's always left at 1 minimum subdivision, maximum 4. If you remember from previously when we talked about the image sampler or the anti-aliasing, I told you that it's a good idea to keep this anywhere between 1 and 25. So let's go with 25 this time. I really doubt it we're gonna need so much for this scene, but we'll just go ahead with it. Now the other thing that I want to lower is this color threshold over here. Instead of 0.01, I want to go ahead and put it at 0.02. That means it's gonna put in more or less subdivision in places that have difference in color. Bear with me, you will understand as we progress. In the color mapping, I have exponential 1, 1, 2.2, which is okay. In my indirect illumination, I have a radiance map and light cache as my primary and secondary bounces. In the radiance preset, I have show calculus phase ticked on and 40 with 20 with very low preset, as well as the light cache is 500 and with the very low 500 and show calculus phase. Now, one of the strengths that V-Ray has is its ability to basically break down the render into its components or the render elements. Now we can see all of these render elements in our visual frame buffer when we go over here. As it is right now, we only have two components, the RGB color and the alpha. So if we want to better see how our render is composed of, what is it composed of, we need to add a few of the elements. So I'm going to click on the add over here and choose the elements I want to use. Now we have quite a list over here, but for this I'm going to choose the lighting, hold down control, click on the global illumination, scroll down a bit more, I can tick on the reflection, but since I don't have anything reflective in this scene, it's not going to be too much of an issue. But all right, I'm going to tick on the reflection as well. Now I'm going to tick the sample rate over here and the shadows and click OK. With this, I should have more passes over here once I do the render. So let's go ahead and do another render and see what happens. Bear in mind though, we changed the image sampler and reduced the subdivisions for it, or not the subdivisions, but the color threshold. We reduced this one. So we should get a more noisy render in turn. So let me just save this. Let's turn it up here. Save it as it is now and render it away. And as we can see, the wall is pretty much noisier. Well, the whole scene in general is noisier. We see a lot more noise coming all over the place. Now this is exactly the opposite of what we wanted to achieve. So what gives? Well, let's save this. All right. Okay, remove this one. Now we have set A, set B. Here's the issue. Now we had this and we wanted to get a cleaner image. We changed some of the settings and now we have even more noise. So how do we deal with this noise? Well, like we said previously, first thing that we need to understand is where is that noise coming from. Now if we go over and check our passes, we're gonna see that we have quite a few passes over here. So let's go and check. First of all, I want to check the alpha, and I can see everything is white because everything in the scene is seen. So go downwards and check the global illumination. Well, hold on a second. Turn off. There we go. The alpha is white. The global illumination settings, as we can see, it's giving me a very nice and clean image. That means all of the settings for the global illumination seem to be okay. As we can see, we have a pretty decent and clean image. So the issues are not coming from the global illumination. That means if we come back to the settings here, this means all of these settings are okay. They're giving us a nice image. So let's try the lighting pass. Now once we click on the lighting pass, we can see that we have a lot of problems. Like all of the lighting that's coming into the scene, it's very, very noisy. So let's see how we can fix this. I need to move it aside. And now we come to the conclusion of how to fix our lighting issues. First thing we need to do is, on my selection, I'm gonna click on the lights. That way, the only thing that I can select in my scene are lights. So I'm going to click on my top light that's coming from the ceiling. And in the modify tab, I'm going to check out and see what kind of sampling options I have for this light. Now, if you scroll down a bit, you're going to find one place here that says sampling. And in the sampling, you have basically three things that you can change. You can change the cutoff, the shadow bias, and the subdivs. Now, the subdivisions or the subdivs are pretty much measure for quality. The more subdivisions you have, the higher the quality of your image should be. So if I increase this from 8 to, let's say, 24, I should be getting a higher quality lighting pass. So let's just try it on a small portion of our render. Just click render last, and I can see that barely makes any difference. Let's try one more time. Yep, it barely makes. So a smaller subdivision with the settings we have, it's very small. So let's try 64. Now we can see that noise is starting to dissipate. We're getting a cleaner image. There we go. Again, a cleaner image. All right, let's try it with even a double, or 128 or 128. Yeah. And render away now. So we are getting a really cleaner or crisper looking lighting pass, but as you could have noticed, the rendering time goes up. So it's a fine-tuning job to get the subdivisions to be high enough so you get rid of the noise coming from it, but still try and maintain a workable or a faster rendering time. I'm gonna go with 64 was nice, but I'm gonna hit it at 80. Hopefully this is gonna get some balance between these. Right, render away one more time. And there we go. We got a nicer or cleaner render. Now we are looking at the lighting pass. If we switch over to the RGB color, you're gonna notice that we still have quite a bit of noise in the scene, but all of these three quadrants that we re-rendered with the new settings seem to be cleaner. But let's see what else we have. We have one very special pass called V-Ray sample rate. When we click it, we basically get something like this. Now, usually, if your settings for the image sampler are set up as something as, let's say, 1 and let's go into the settings for V-Ray, 1 and 25. If it's using a value that's closer to 25, then the colors are going to be more towards red. If it's using a color which is more, if it's using a value that's closer to the minimum, then it's supposed to be blue. Now, in this case, everything is pushed more towards blue because this maximum subdivision is set up as 25. So I want to go ahead and see if this is going to make any big change. If I go and click it at 1 and 15, and now re-render this scene, we should get a new beauty pass or a new final pass with the new settings. So now even the lighting, as you can see, as it's clearing up, we changed the subdivisions to 80, and most of the noise coming from the light is being cleaned up, which in turn gives us a much more clean lighting pass. It's still not perfect, but by changing some more of the settings for it, we can probably get it to, well, look clean. But now when we go to the sample rate, you can see right here on the edges there's some greenish colors appearing. We have some darker blues. That means that around these corners, or the corners of our model, we are receiving more subdivisions. So in general, this sample rate pass should be a nice guideline for you to understand where you have issues or where the majority of the samples or the anti-aliasing is working. If you have a clean render and your anti-aliasing is not supposed to work too much to fix the issues, you're gonna have faster or quicker renders. Now, the last thing I want to check is my shadows. The shadows, again, as we can see, the shadow path is very noisy. That is controlled, again, from the lights. So I'm gonna check this light as well and go with 80, or let's simply ramp it up, and instead of 128, let's get it at 256 for both lights. It's a bit of an overkill, but it should clear up our scene from all of the issues we had from the lighting pass. So let's see. Re-render, and like we saw previously, it's probably gonna take a bit more time to finish it up, because more samples from the lighting means more issues. But as we can see, now we no longer have any noise coming from our lighting pass, which is clean and nice. But let's see. Yeah, that worked fine. Now we can see that as these render buckets are cleaning up, we no longer have any noise happening. Even on our model over here, the noise is cleaning up, and we are gonna end up with a nice looking crisp render. All right, I'm gonna let it render out, and here it is. We can see that all of the render buckets are cleaning up rather nicely, and now even if we go into the shadows, we can notice that right away all the noise is gone. Now, I showed you how to clean up the noise from the lighting pass and the shadow pass. The only thing that's left where you can get some noise is if you had any reflections in the scene. But since I don't have any reflection in the scene on any of my models in here, I can change it so I can put some reflection on this model, and hopefully that's going to give us something to work with. Just wait for it to finish. Yeah, it should take about another 5 or 10 seconds, and we should be done. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to save this one as well. And now turn this off, open up our materials, and for our diffuse here, just ramp up the reflection a bit, make sure we have frontal on, and let's re-render just one small part over here. Now, since this scene again is with a high amount of subdivisions in the lighting pass, it's taking its time, but still we're getting some nice results happening over here. Now if we go back into the reflection, we can see that this reflection pass is very clear. Now if we had noise happening in here, the way to fix it would be to increase the subdivisions for the reflection. The same would happen even if you had a refractive surface, and then the subdivisions would increase and give you a noise-free render. Let's go back to RGB. And again, here we go. This is what we ended up with. And let's compare it to the first one, the one we started off with. So there we go. This is what we started off with. As you can notice, we have quite a bit of noise here. And then we changed it so the settings were, we changed the anti-aliasing settings to go from 1 to 15 with a color threshold of 0.02, and that in turn changed our render to look something like this, which meant we got a lot more noise happening into our scene. But with that, we also introduced the passes that more or less define where that noise is coming from. So by going into the lighting pass, we managed to detect where the issue was coming from. Set A, set B. There we go. Managed to find where the issue was coming from, and we fixed it by increasing the subdivisions on the lights, and that fixed the issues with the lighting and the shadow pass. The global illumination is pretty clean, so we didn't have to touch that. The reflection seems very nice, so we didn't have to increase that. And what we're left with is the RGB, or the final render. Now, in case you still have some flares of noise, something like this over here, the way to fix this would be to go into your settings tab over here, and in here you have a DMC sampler and a noise threshold. If you increase this, or better yet, decrease this to something like 0.05, or in extreme cases to 0.3, I wouldn't go underneath this. This is the least amount of noise that it's going to be allowed through the renderer. So for example, if I just go ahead now and render out only this part, let's make this so it's 16, so it's smaller render buckets, render out this, it's doing its best to make sure that we don't have any more noise happening into our scene. Let's see some other place, maybe over here. Yeah. So if you're seeing any more, well, let's not call it noise, but in this case, this is pixelization, because the render size is 800 by 800. So with these settings, you should be getting a very clean and a very, well, fast render if you optimize the subdivisions for the lighting. So with this, I would like to finish with the cleanup for the noise, and I would like to thank you for watching, and I really hope you enjoyed the video. And don't forget to check out the previous videos of the Introduction to V-Ray series. And also, if you enjoyed these videos and you would like me to make more, subscribe, like, comment, and share it around so you can reach more people. Heck, I even finally managed to get all the sharing buttons working on the site, so give that thing a look as well. So take care and see you in the next video.